Last week, at around the middle of 2026, I uploaded this YouTube video right here about animated redstone fans with pistons, which I don't have to say because you can already see the title. In that video, I explained the premise of fans with pistons, why they are more difficult to make than regular fans with trapdoors, how I overcame the issues I encountered working on my design, and my final design itself, which you can see right here. If you want to, you can actually go back and watch that video though. Maybe do so at like 2 times speed, or if you can understand, even faster, because to be honest, after reviewing that video a couple of times, I don't think I did the world's best job explaining the issues I encountered, how I overcame them, or how my actual design works. And on top of that, I don't even think this actual design is that good. I mean, I am still quite happy with it, but compared to the new design that's behind this big red box over here, I do think it's a lot worse. And there is definitely one main issue I can see incredibly clearly now that's a lot less of a problem on the newer design. So, this video will be split into 2 halves. In the first half, I will be attempting to re-explain the issues I ran into and how to fix them. And the second half, I'll show my new and improved design, do a better job explaining how it works, and do a better job explaining how I could improve it. Does that sound good? I hope so. Also, one final thing, yeah, you're welcome for the improved mic quality, because last video it was a lot worse than I expected, I can't lie. So what are the problems with taking a fan originally made with trapdoors like this one over here and replacing the trapdoors with pistons like I did over here? Well, you can clearly see some problems, but there are 3 important ones. This is Jake Kelton's original fan that started the whole BuildStone trend thing last year, by the way. I'm using it here because I already have it downloaded and imported into this world. Its design is quite similar to my old and new fan with pistons designs, unlike a lot of more modern trapdoor fan designs. And I can't be bothered to download another more modern design when I already have this one directly in front of me. The first issue is quasi-connectivity. If you don't know what that is, then to explain it faster than I did in the last video, it's a feature that lets pistons be powered from a block higher than they should normally be able to be powered from. So this piston here, as you would expect, can be powered from here normally, it can be powered from here, it can be powered from here, but also it can be powered from all the way up here. But the pistons must receive a block update before they can change state. As you can see, the piston does not actually change state until I update one of the blocks around it. Even that applies when unpowering as well. And this is a problem because here, for example, I've just frozen the game. You can see here are the blocks that are extended, right? But this block right here has no power actually going into it. It shouldn't be extended, this piston or block right here. It is only being powered because the block above it is being powered by that dust, leading to much more pistons being extended than there should be, which messes up the animation quite a bit. QC is actually the smallest problem for this fan though, as the next one is pistons simply take much longer to actually change state than trapdoors. Here I have frozen the tick rate of the game, which controls how the majority of mechanics in the game works. For example, in the fan, despite the fact that the repeater behind this one here is powered, this repeater cannot power until a few ticks pass. A trapdoor, however, can literally change from being open to close instantly the moment it receives and loses power, as you can see here. Unlike the piston, which cannot do that. In fact, the piston actually takes 1 game tick, give me a second, to realize it is powered, and then another 2 game ticks to actually extend. If you don't know what game ticks are in Minecraft and don't really understand my tick rate explanation very well, then here is a screenshot from the Minecraft wiki that explains game tick, and here is one that explains redstone ticks, and which are the other important type of ticks. And if you want to know anything more, I'll just leave a link to the wiki article in the description. But pistons being much slower means a lot of pistons that either should or shouldn't be powered will be in the wrong state, as they take too long to change state. For example, this piston here is either in the process of extending or retracting. It should already be extended or retracted. Same with that one, same with that one, same with these 3 here. You know, because they are highlighted weirdly compared to these ones over here, and I can't put an outline over them when looking at them. And also, some of these extended and retracted blocks also will have just simply not like started changing state yet, despite the fact that there's redstone power, because they need one more tick to actually do that. The third and final important issue is that pistons have an animation when changing states, and combined with them taking 2 game ticks to change state as opposed to Trapdoor's instantaneous state change, this means you can have 3 powered pistons next to each other and they can all look slightly different. For example, like this. All 3 of these pistons are powered. This one hasn't realized it's powered yet. This one is in the middle of powering, and this one is actually fully powered. And if you don't put enough delay between each frame of the animation, the fan will end up no longer looking like a fan and instead looking something like this, which isn't ideal. Now, how did I get around these issues? To get around QC, I redesigned the redstone so we will be powering 2x1 pixels over 1x1 pixel. Each pixel is an area that can be independently controlled. I power this block right here, that powers this pixel. I cannot independently power both of these pistons, so this is 1 pixel. I can independently power this pixel here though. So I planned out every frame of the animation to look something like this. And as you can see, 2x1 pixels are a bit limiting, as for example, in frame 2 we can extend these blocks here to allow it to look something more like this, and that leads to a more smooth animation. Something I cannot do is over here, I cannot make a frame look something like this because I cannot independently power these blocks or these blocks, which means the animation will be a bit clunky and it will sort of slow down as it goes vertical and speed up as it goes horizontal. And I'm using 2x1 pixels over 2x2 pixels because that would mean the fan would be huge. So despite the fact I could make a much nicer looking animation, the fan would be so big it kind of defeats the purpose of BuildStone, as you can't put that fan in any build. To get around the other 2 issues, we just greatly slow down the fan and make sure every pixel in each frame extends at once, leading to a fan that instead of looking like this down here, looks like this. Right, now I've re-explained that, let's take a look at the problems with this first fan with pistons design, and then I'll show you my new and improved one, and a much better explanation on how it works. The main issue is I didn't make the animation as the same as the frames I laid out, and the amount of blocks extended in each frame ends up being different, leading to a slightly wonky animation. For example, let's take a look at this frame here. What this frame should look like is like this, but instead it looks like this, and that is because I decided to give these 4 tick repeaters instead of 6 ticks. I did this because adding 4 ticks to the time seemed a lot easier than 6 ticks, and I thought 6 ticks would be really difficult. That also is just not true. Also, if we look at more future frames, you can see every frame seems to have some issue with it. This frame should have these blocks extended, but it doesn't. But this block here for some reason is being extended. And that is because it leads into this next frame, which also leads us into the frames with the biggest problem being the first frame, second frame, and just the last frame. Because I decided to split up the first frame into like 2 weird mini frames, and I did this because I thought it would be really hard to repeat the animation if I didn't do this, but that's completely wrong. I don't know what made me think that. But overall, throughout this whole design, many pixels are powered at the wrong points or powered for too short, and all that together leads to a fan that's not really looking the best. So, with all that being said, here's the reveal of the fan with pistons version 2. And in 3, 2, 1, fan with pistons. I forgot to turn on the fan again. Here it is. I personally think it's a lot better than this previous one over here, and I'm really quite happy with it. I'll leave a world download in the description again, but for now let's take a proper look at how this thing actually works. So here is a basic setup for a fan with pistons with 0 redstone behind it other than the blocks that the redstone will go on. The first thing I would have done is making the frames of the animation, so I can have a basic idea for what I want to power, where and when. I didn't have to do this though because I already did when I was doing the previous design. Next, I split up the pixels into groups, which I did redo due to the way I did it in the previous design, somehow just being wrong. This time I split them into these categories. Green powers for 1 frame, yellow powers for 2 frames, orange powers for 3 frames, red powers twice, magenta and purple powers for 2 frames when powering and powers twice. I separated magenta and purple because originally one of these powered for 3 frames one time and then repowered for 1 frame. But as one of those 3 frames was the first one, I decided I would just make it so that instead it powers for slightly longer at the end, leading to it overlapping to being powered when the animation is looping. Now I decided to start work on the redstone, and I did all of the green and yellow pixels first, as they were by far the easiest to make. And I also wired up the pixels frame by frame. So basically I did the green and yellow pixels for the first frame, and then the next frame, and then the frame after, so on and so on, until after that. And then I did all of the red pixels, the orange pixels, and the magenta and purple pixels. And just before starting the wiring process, let me explain how I can make a certain pixel stay on for a certain amount of frames. As you can see here, I have 2 pistons, both with 4 ticks of delay into them. One of them has 2 2-tick repeaters, and one of them has a 4-tick repeater. I've slowed down the game to 1/4 of the speed so you can see this a lot more clearly. If I power both of the pistons at the same time and just put a pulse into them, they both take the same amount of time to turn on, but as you can see, this one stayed on for significantly longer. This is because while the total amount of delay into a redstone component defines how long it will take to power, the length of time it will be fully powered for is defined by the minimum length of delay on the repeater. I say fully powered because after losing its power, it still has the 1 game tick delay to be able to change state, and 1 redstone tick, the ticks I've been mostly talking about here, delay of it showing itself retracting before it's fully retracted. So this piston here is powered for 2 ticks, while this one is powered for 4 ticks. So if I just make 2 ticks to be 1 frame of the animation, then I can easily control if a pixel is active for 1 frame or 2 frames through setting a repeater to be either 2 or 4 ticks. Now there were 2 pixels I needed to extend for 3 ticks, being these 2 here, as you can see in my layout of all the frames. If we take a look at my layout of all the frames, you can see they extend over here, stay extended for this frame, stay extended for this frame, but retract over here, basically. I, in my original design, decided that using 4 ticks was good enough, as you can't exactly get 6 ticks on a repeater. It's not like getting a 6-tick delay wasn't an easy thing to do. When I actually thought about it for a bit, I came up with a solution in less than 10 minutes. What I can do is I can put both a 4-tick repeater and a 2-tick repeater into the piston at different sides, but put another 4-tick repeater behind this 2-tick repeater, and then I can link them both up to the same input. So if I flick this directly after the first 4 ticks are up, the piston will stay extended for another 2 ticks, then it will retract. Now there should be a slight problem with this. As the minimum delay into this repeater right here is 4 ticks, it should power the piston for another 4 ticks, leading to 8 in total now, right? If you thought that, which you probably didn't, it sort of does make sense, but actually, well, no. Here's why. Let's freeze the game to make this a bit easier to see. When I power this lever and I step forward 1 redstone tick, both of the repeaters now have power into them at the same time. If I step forward another tick, and another one, and another one, and another one, as you can see, both repeaters are powered at the exact same time. The first one powers the piston, and the second one powers the 2-tick repeater. The 2-tick repeater takes 2 ticks to power, just like how the golden dandelions are golden If I step forward 2 redstone ticks, as you can see, the 2-tick repeater has now powered. After another 2 ticks, both 4-tick repeaters turn off, but the 2-tick repeater takes another 2 ticks to turn off after losing power. So it stays on for 2 more ticks, powering the piston for 6 ticks in total, until it can finally unpowered. The rule of the minimum delay defining the length the piston is powered for mainly applies when the piston is being powered from one place. I don't use 1-tick repeaters because, as explained in my last video, 1-tick pulses cause pistons to spit out their blocks even when they are sticky pistons, meaning they won't retract them when extended until given another pulse. Now let's head over to this base of a fan that I made here, and let's sort of semi-rebuild the fan. Now for the first frame down here, as you can see, there aren't really that many pixels I can actually do. In fact, there are only 4 that aren't red, purple or magenta, and those 4 are all yellow. By the way my design works is by powering the first frame first, and then while it's unpowering we power the second frame, and then while that's unpowering we power the third, and then the fourth, and then so on, and then once this last frame here is unpowering, we loop the animation so this frame starts powering again and the cycle continues. Now the minimum delay I will be putting into these pistons is 2 ticks, but as all of these pixels are yellow it ends up being 4 ticks. So let's put 4 ticks behind every piston that is important. Here's the first one, here's the second one, here's the third one, and here's the fourth one. Now I'll hook this up. I'm going to put 10 blocks here, just so there's enough space for all of the repeaters, and then I will put 1 repeater at the start of every line and 1 repeater before every line, before I make a tower that leads all the way up to the top. Okay, so I've hooked all of the wires up now, and I've put an observer here so that all I need to do is I can flick this lever, and as you can see they quickly turn on and then turn off like they're meant to. Now let's take a look at the next frame over here, which has these pixels and these pixels which are new, and they are actually green, so I can hook them up. Now because the previous frame had 4 ticks, the next frame needs to have 6 ticks, which requires 6 2-tick repeaters as these pixels are green, so they only stay on for 1 frame, unlike these pixels here which are yellow. So now I've hooked that up, I can just flick this lever over here and it does that. Also, the reason I'm putting a 1-tick repeater at the start of every lane is simply the redstone signal strength, even with this repeater here, will just simply not be enough to reach all the way over here from down there or down there. So now I'm just going to speedrun all of the rest of the frames, be right back. Okay, so I've only done the first half just to save on time, but this is what I've got so far now. So now I can flick this lever again and we sort of have a fan animation. Yeah, it's, well, you can see the animation kind of. Imagine that for the full fan, I guess. But now the next pixel I'll hook up is the orange one, which we can do through simply putting our 4-tick repeater here, and then our second one here, and a 2-tick one here. And then we find out what frame it starts on. It starts on that frame there. I'll just find another pixel that starts on that frame, and this has 6 repeaters basically, but we remove 6 ticks, essentially 3 repeaters, so I can hook that up like that. And then if I flick the lever, you see that pixel now turns on. Also, one other thing I had to do is I have to put a piston here above this piston, because this piston is required to update this piston and QC it. I don't have to use a piston to give this other piston an update. I can use like a note block or something, but I just like pistons, so I used one, you know. Also, here's a proper look at the redstone so far, and yeah, hopefully you can understand what's going on now and why there are so many repeaters like this. But now to look at how the red, magenta and purple pixels work, I will just be showing the actual design because I don't really want to rebuild that unless I'm using Litematica or something. Also, speaking of Litematica, I will link to all mods I've used in this video in the description. None actually like affect redstone, but it's just so you can know what mods actually provide these cool extra features I've got. So let's take a look at the red pixels first, as they were by far the easiest out of these 3 to actually hook up. And also I've put the stained glass in front of the actual fan so you can see which pixels I'm talking about. So what I did was I made this loop right here where the redstone can go, remember the red pixels are the ones that need to power twice. So I made this loop right here where the redstone takes 2 paths. There's one path which goes straight through this 2-tick repeater and then can go and quickly power the pixels once, and then there's this other path with loads of delay that will power the pixels again at the correct time. Purple and magenta pixels work in similar ways to the red ones, but they have their own separate loop. The purple one goes through this loop over here. Also, by the way, the red one also needs to go through this loop all the way at the back to be able to get to these pixels here and here to power these, but I wasn't able to do that for the purple and magenta. So in purple there was a small gap I could build another staircase in, and one problem is the red and purple lines cannot interfere with the other lines, or otherwise they will power pistons at times they're not meant to be powered at. And well, I can't add any extra repeaters. I've got to move repeaters around in order for them to have the exact correct amount of delay and for them to reach the signal. But okay, let's take a look at this loop over here, which is for the purple one, and despite the fact it is active for 4 ticks, it still only has 2 ticks in the loop here. And if we go up through this tower over here, which is incredibly cramped, I'm literally inside blocks constantly, you can see it goes through this block here, through these 2 repeaters here, in order to power that pixel. And then for the other one, it goes up to here, and then goes through here, through this block here, and over here. Now, one thing that actually made fitting the redstone into the gaps a lot harder is that blocks can actually power redstone around them even if they're not connected to the blocks, if there's a repeater going into the block. I believe that's called being like hard powered, but I believe redstone dust going into the block is soft powering it, and a repeater going into it is hard powering it. I believe those are like the actual names, so I'm not fully certain on that. I have to like research more on how that works. But it meant that I, for example, couldn't put this repeater here over here because it would power this dust when this one is powering, which is something I do not want. And the magenta route was even more painful to work with because I couldn't make another slab tower for it to connect through because there simply was not enough space. So what I had to do instead was put it here in the orange thing, which required a lot of rearranging repeaters and moving stuff around. And this layer here by far took me probably, to be honest, a similar amount of time to doing all of the non-red, magenta or purple pixels. So I had to make this loop here, which then leads into this target block, which leads into that repeater, which leads here to power this pixel. I think it's this one. Yeah, this one is from the purple, this one here is from the magenta. And yeah, also one other thing, the reason I don't put this mechanism here in the middle is because to get redstone up on Java Edition anyways is really easy using these slab towers, and I have to use these slab towers because they drastically reduce the amount of redstone I need to go up vertically compared to like a pillar that looks something like this. But getting redstone to go down, you can't use the slabs, which makes it incredibly annoying and would actually require more redstone dust, meaning the signal strength would be an even larger issue, so it's much easier to just leave this at the very bottom here. But essentially, the main issue with actually wiring up these pixels specifically was just the really limited amount of space I had. After I figured out this mechanism here, if I had much more space, it would be a lot easier to work with. But because of how cramped everything was, that caused it to take multiple more hours than it should have. And that is a basic overview of how this fan works. Again, I'll leave a world download in the description if you want to take a better look at it, but I think I've done a much better job explaining this fan than I did explaining that fan over there. But finally, how could we actually improve this design? Well, the first issue is that the fan blades are literally just straight lines. I've realised this is not what fan blades look like. This is what fan blades look like. As you can see, they're actually a bit curved and they're also 3D, not just straight lines. Now, while I can't obviously make the fan blades like truly 3D to the point where they come out so it can actually look like they're pushing air forwards, because at that point I might as well say, yeah, we should remove the background as well and remove all of this redstone here. And that's not exactly possible, is it? What I can do is at least try and recreate that 2D shape. The next issue is that if you actually look, the fan sort of slows down when going here and going vertical compared to when it goes horizontally. This is an issue, to be honest, I don't really know how to fix because it's caused by our 2x1 pixels and quasi-connectivity. We could solve this with 2x2 pixels, but remember, huge fan, something I don't really want. And the third issue is this fan is not easily scalable. While I've built it for this size here, adding some extra pistons and pixels to the end would cause me to have to basically rewire a lot of the redstone entirely, or at least completely build new parts and have to connect them up, and it would be really difficult. I think the best way to fix this issue would be by using an observer-based design, which is also something, as I said in the last video, I am planning on looking into. And that's it. I hope I did a much better job explaining everything than I did last time, and I mean, I personally think I did, and yeah. If you enjoyed, hit the like button. If I magically have 500 subs by the end of the week, give the video a hype, and if you are watching a while after release, check out some of my other videos, and if you enjoyed them too, then subscribe. But if watching at the time of release, then I guess check out my other video. But if you're watching this before that, then that one is sort of just worse, so maybe wait for me to work on more content. I actually have 6 more ideas for videos on fans with pistons, and I will be guaranteed to make 3 more of them. But I also have plans for many non-fan with pistons videos, and on some other channels that don't exist yet, non-Minecraft videos too. I will say my next 2 videos planned are currently not fan with pistons related, but for now that's everything I got. Bye. I wonder if Minecraft's possible to accurate hitboxes.